The 911 operator could hear panic pouring through the phone. A man struggled to catch his breath as he tried to explain the unimaginable. His stepdaughter had just shot his wife, and moments earlier, she had turned the gun on him. When deputies arrived at the house in Rankin County, Mississippi, he was still on the call. As officers entered, he collapsed to the floor, overwhelmed by shock and unable to fully process what had just happened. Inside a bedroom, they discovered 40-year-old Ashley Smiley lying dead from multiple gunshot wounds. The person responsible was Ashley's own daughter, 14-year-old Carly Gregg. By the time officers reached the scene, Carly had already fled, but she didn't get far. A deputy spotted her walking along a nearby road. When asked if she was involved in the shooting, she calmly admitted that she was. She was immediately taken into custody, beginning an investigation that would soon shock the entire community. Before that day, Carly Gregg appeared to be an ordinary teenager. She lived with her mother, Ashley Smiley, and her stepfather, Heath Smiley. Friends described her as intelligent, friendly, and active in school. Ashley was a respected teacher who was loved by students and parents alike, while Heath was known as a caring stepfather who treated Carly as if she were his own daughter. From the outside, the family appeared stable and happy. Nothing about their lives suggested the tragedy that was about to unfold on March 19, 2024. Security footage later revealed how the day began. Carly and her mother returned home from school together as they normally would. There were no visible arguments, no signs of conflict, and nothing that appeared unusual. Ashley went about her routine while Carly spent some time outside with the family dogs. Everything looked peaceful, but only minutes later, Carly walked into her parents' bedroom and retrieved a loaded handgun from her mother's side of the bed. With the weapon hidden behind her back, she quietly moved through the house. The cameras captured her pausing briefly as if checking whether her mother was nearby before continuing down the hallway toward her bedroom. What happened next would become the focus of the entire case. According to investigators, Carly entered her room where Ashley was located and fired 3 shots, striking her mother in the face and beneath the chin. Ashley died from her injuries. Afterward, Carly did not call for help. Instead, prosecutors said she calmly walked into the kitchen and picked up a phone. Pretending to be her mother, she sent a text message to Heath Smiley asking when he would be home. Heath replied that he would be delayed and arrive later than expected. Investigators would later argue that the message was part of a plan to lure him back to the house. While waiting, Carly contacted several friends. According to testimony presented in court, she invited one friend to come over and see what had happened. Other classmates later reported receiving calls from her. Some suggested contacting emergency services, but Carly reportedly discouraged them from doing so. When one friend eventually arrived at the home, prosecutors claimed Carly spoke openly about shooting her mother and suggested she intended to do the same to Heath when he returned. The statements described during trial painted a disturbing picture of a teenager who appeared unusually calm despite the horrifying events that had already taken place. About an hour later, Heath Smiley pulled into the driveway after work, completely unaware of what awaited him inside. As he entered the house, Carly was allegedly hiding nearby with a handgun. Investigators said she suddenly opened fire, striking him in the shoulder. Despite being wounded, Heath managed to wrestle the weapon away from her before additional shots could be fired. Carly then fled the house, jumping a fence and running from the property. In the chaos that followed, Heath called 911. During the emotional call, he repeatedly told dispatchers that his wife was dead and that his stepdaughter had tried to kill him. The recording captured the confusion, fear, and disbelief of a man struggling to understand what had just happened inside his own home. Not long after leaving the property, Carly Gregg was located by law enforcement walking along a nearby roadway. Officers approached her carefully and asked whether she had any involvement in the shooting. To their surprise, she admitted that she did. She was immediately placed in handcuffs and transported for questioning. Before leaving the area, investigators conducted tests on her hands looking for evidence that she had recently fired a weapon. Back at the Smiley home, officers continued processing the scene. Inside Carly's bedroom, they found Ashley Smiley dead from multiple gunshot wounds. The discovery confirmed the horrifying details Heath had described during his frantic 911 call. As investigators secured the property, they began searching for any evidence that might explain why a 14-year-old girl would attack the people closest to her. One of the most important breakthroughs came from the home's security cameras. Detectives reviewed hours of footage and were able to reconstruct much of what happened that afternoon. The recordings showed Carly and Ashley arriving home together from school. Nothing in their behavior suggested an argument or confrontation. A short time later, Carly was seen entering her parents' bedroom before leaving with a handgun concealed behind her back. The footage then captured her moving through the house and heading toward her bedroom, where Ashley had gone earlier. Although the shooting itself was not recorded, investigators believe the video clearly documented the moments leading up to it. The footage also showed Carly using a phone after the shooting and moving through the house while waiting for Heath to return home. As detectives dug deeper into Carly's life, they uncovered information suggesting she had been struggling emotionally for quite some time. Friends and family members later revealed that Ashley had recently discovered Carly was secretly vaping and using marijuana. Around the same period, concerns had grown regarding Carly's mental health. Court testimony later revealed that she had a history of self-harm and had previously experienced significant emotional difficulties. Worried about her well-being, Ashley and Heath had sought professional help and arranged for therapy. In early 2024, Carly was prescribed medication intended to help manage symptoms of anxiety and depression. However, according to later testimony, she complained that the medication did not seem to be helping and sometimes made her feel worse. As the case moved toward trial, investigators discovered journal entries written by Carly in the weeks and months before the shooting. Some of those writings would become a major focus in court. In the entries, she described feeling emotionally detached, struggling with her mental health, and hearing voices. One journal entry, written roughly a week before the shooting, referenced what she believed may have been a psychotic episode. Other passages contained troubling statements about her beliefs and thoughts. For prosecutors, the writings raised concerns about her mindset. For the defense, they became evidence supporting the argument that Carly was suffering from severe psychiatric problems that had gone largely unnoticed by those around her. When the trial finally began, both sides agreed on one thing. Carly Gregg was responsible for shooting Ashley Smiley and attempting to shoot Heath Smiley. The real dispute centered on why it happened and whether Carly fully understood her actions. Prosecutors argued that the evidence pointed to planning and intent. They highlighted the security footage showing Carly retrieving the gun, concealing it from view, and later sending messages while pretending to be her mother. They also pointed to the allegation that she discussed her actions with friends and waited for Heath to return home before attacking him. According to the state, these were not the actions of someone acting without awareness. Instead, they argued that Carly understood exactly what she was doing. The defense presented a very different explanation. Their case focused heavily on Carly's mental health history and the possibility that she was experiencing a severe psychological crisis. Attorneys argued that there was no obvious motive, no long history of violence, and no evidence of abuse within the home. They maintained that Carly had been a well-liked teenager with supportive parents and a stable environment. According to the defense, the shooting was the result of a mental breakdown rather than a carefully planned crime. If the jury accepted that explanation, Carly could potentially be found not guilty by reason of insanity and committed to a psychiatric facility instead of spending the rest of her life in prison. Several witnesses testified about Carly's mental health struggles. Among them was a psychiatrist who had treated her prior to the shooting. He told the jury that Carly reported experiencing depression from a young age and described hearing voices. He also discussed her history of self-harm and emotional distress. According to his professional opinion, Carly suffered from a serious psychiatric illness that was more severe than many people realized. When asked whether she understood the nature of her actions at the time of the shooting, he stated that he did not believe she fully did. His testimony became one of the strongest pieces of evidence supporting the defense's argument that mental illness played a major role in the tragedy. However, other experts disagreed. The state's psychiatric witnesses challenged the defense's conclusions and rejected the claim that Carly met the legal standard for insanity under Mississippi law. They argued that the available evidence showed she knew the difference between right and wrong. They also questioned whether her prescribed medication could have caused the type of breakdown described by the defense. According to their testimony, the dosage she had been taking was too low to support that theory. The conflicting expert opinions left jurors with the difficult task of deciding which interpretation of Carly's mental state was most convincing. One of the most emotional moments of the trial came when Heath Smiley testified. Despite everything that had happened, he did not describe Carly as cruel or evil. Instead, he remembered her as a sweet girl whom he had loved like his own daughter. He spoke about the close relationship they once shared and recalled a Father's Day letter she had written expressing her appreciation for him. Heath admitted that even after being shot, he struggled to understand what had happened. At one point, he said he believed something must have gone terribly wrong because the actions he witnessed did not match the person he thought he knew. His testimony added another layer of complexity to a case that already seemed difficult to comprehend. After hearing weeks of testimony, reviewing the evidence, and listening to arguments from both sides, the jury reached its decision. Carly Gregg was found guilty of first-degree murder for the killing of Ashley Smiley. She was also convicted of attempted murder for shooting Heath Smiley and guilty of tampering with evidence. The verdict represented a complete rejection of the insanity defense. Jurors ultimately concluded that Carly understood the nature and consequences of her actions when the crimes were committed. With the verdict delivered, the case entered its final stage. The court sentenced Carly Gregg to life in prison for the murder conviction, along with additional penalties related to the other charges. Because she was a juvenile at the time of the offense, she would initially be housed in a secure juvenile facility before eventually being transferred into the adult prison system. The sentence brought the legal proceedings to a close, but left behind countless unanswered questions. What happened inside that home on March 19, 2024, remains one of the most disturbing family tragedies in recent Mississippi history. A respected teacher lost her life, a family was shattered forever, and a teenager who once seemed to have a promising future now faces the consequences of actions that changed countless lives in a matter of minutes.